art room today, and we're going to learn about abstract art. Abstract art is really fun. It is when an artist takes lines and shapes and puts a work of art together that our brain can't really think of in identifying. It's not a work of art that looks like an animal or a person or a still life or a tree. It is just a bunch of shapes, lines, and colors kind of put together in a design that's pleasing to the artist and sometimes the viewer. We're going to look at a bunch of different artists and artworks, and we're going to create our very own abstract art today. There are so many abstract art artists out there, and I'm going to introduce you to a few today. Some of our older students will look down below at Victor Vasarely, and he was what was considered op art. So even though if you look at these cubes, he would take like mathematical shapes that you learn about, cubes and spheres and cones, and even though the paper is flat, when you go to see his artwork, it looks as if it is 3D by the way that he drew it, and it kind of plays tricks on your eyes. Jackson Pollock was an amazing abstract artist, but he went one step further, and he was kind of what we call the father of action painting. So you would actually envision him creating this work of art. He would put it on the floor and splatter paint everywhere and get really physically involved in his artwork. Vasily Kandinsky was an abstract artist that used shapes and lines, and he connected music with his art. Vasily Kandinsky was fascinated with music and art and almost being an inventor for the abstract movement. He really took lines, shapes, and the connections of what music made him feel into an amazing amount of abstract paintings that he left us today to study. The abstract art we're going to create today is going to use shapes and lines, and we are going to use the initial of our first name. So in art, a lot of times with clay, we'll carve our initials, and boys and girls are like, well, what are initials? And that's going to be one of our vocabulary words. Initial is the letter of your first name. So my name is Mrs. Samsel. That starts with an M. It also happens to be Melissa, which starts with an M. So I used the letter M, and then I used my lines and my patterns and my shapes, and I made an abstract design around it. We're going to be inspired by these designs from artist Kim McConnell today. So get your materials and let's get started. Okay, for today's lesson, you're going to need a ruler, pencil, markers and crayons, and a piece of white paper to color with. So go ahead and pause the movie, get your materials, and let's get started. In my example, you can see today we're going to use our basic lines and shapes to make an abstract design using the first letter of our name in a block form and kind of divide it up in different sections. So on the white paper, what I would like for you to do is you want the letter of your name to be really large. So I want it to definitely be taller than my hand. And my name is an M for Melissa, but I'm going to start with a different letter because you can see M. So my oldest daughter, her name is Annabelle, so I'm going to do a big letter A. So just begin by writing your first letter in a normal way. And then to turn it into a block letter, you're going to want to make it about 2 fingers spaced out. And you'll just continue that width of 2 fingers all the way along. And it can be kind of curvy or wavy, as creative as you want, but this is a good measurement to help you know how wide and big you want the A to be for the name. And I can erase that little dash. And then I would do the same thing right here. And depending where you made this line, I can make it up here, but if this triangle looks small, I could make it
down there. And there is a basic block letter. I could go back and erase in here, and this would just be my full A, but we're actually gonna divide this up in sections. So now I'm gonna get my ruler, and I'm just gonna take my ruler, and I'm using my ruler for a straight edge, so I have to hold it with one hand. Now, if you don't have a ruler at home, that's okay. You could also use some markers or crayons or any kind of straight edge. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'll show you. You know, I was able to make a straight edge with the side of my markers. And I just want you to kind of break apart your work of art in different sections. So this one I'm going to make a vertical line all the way down my paper. So I know this will be a pattern. This will be a pattern here. I'll have a pattern in here, here. And our goal is that the patterns are different. And we want, once we divide it up, we want to maybe count how many different patterned areas we have. Because if I left this big space, that's not really great. But I don't want to do a bazillion and burn myself out that I'm like bored and I don't want to do it anymore. So we want it to be something that we feel like we can accomplish, that will look good, and that we're proud of. Okay, so right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 patterns. And then I have my name. And when I go to make the lines to divide my name, I don't want to kind of divide it right in the same. I'm going to come up with a different line. It doesn't really matter where you want to do it. So I know I'll have one here, here, and here. And I'm going to divide this one just like that and see what it looks like. So make your goal to have at least 10 different sections for your patterns. Now, what you'll do is come up with a color with your markers. So any color you want, you're going to come up with a section, and in this section, I'm going to come up with a pattern. So I'm just going to begin by doing zigzags. Okay. And now in this example, I outlined everything in a black marker. If you want to outline it in the different colored markers, you can and see the contrast of what that looks like. So I'll do it in this example, and then you can decide after watching the video how you want to do it. So that would be my one section of purple. Okay. Now I'm gonna switch colors, and here's gonna be my orange. So this time I'm gonna come up with a pattern of hearts. So again, it could be lines, shapes, designs, maybe something that describes things you like. Now remember, abstract art is art that isn't easily identified as, hey, that's a picture of fruit, that's a picture of a person, that's a painting of a dog. It's lines and shapes and colors that are put together in a design that's sometimes pleasing to the eye. So now if I start into my letter A, I'm gonna have my red line run next to the purple. And this one I'm gonna come up with the spiral line, which kiddos know that one's my favorite. And so you might notice that I'm kind of having the spiral fill up the whole space. You can do it however you want. So this one I want to color in a checkered pattern. So I would make lines in one direction, horizontal or vertical, and then the opposite direction. And like a checkered board, you color every other one. Lots of patterns in this lesson. And I want to make sure that two green squares do not touch. So if I color this one, that would kind of ruin the design. Which I've done before, so no worries if that happens. And then this one. I'm gonna go down to this section. And when I think of my lines, and I think, okay, I have my wavy, I did a zigzag, I did the spiral, and I'm gonna maybe just do some I did the zigzag, so I'm gonna do the wavy now. Okay. Again, changing up the colors over here. Okay, so check it on let's check the line list first. We did wavy, zigzag. Let's do straight. So I'm gonna do this straight on a diagonal. And I'm kind of looking at spacing them equally. I'm not having a big gap, but there's a lot of different ways that you can make patterns with straight lines. I'm gonna go back to this A right here. I always like doing things that have my name or maybe the letter for my name because I can sometimes hang them on my front door of my bedroom with a piece of tape, or it could be the cover of a portfolio in my binder, labeling to symbolize or stand for my name. So I'm excited to see what ideas you guys have. So I used all my lines. I did wavy, zigzag, straight, dotted, which I was just doing, and then the spiral. So perfect. Shapes I could use. So over here, yellow's sometimes hard to see. I did some hearts. Over here, I'm gonna do some stars. If you don't know how to make a star, that's okay. You can do it however you want. I'm also checking and seeing, hey, did I use all these colors? So now I'm gonna use some black. And this is now I'm gonna start making patterns at my own. So I'm gonna use circles and lines. Like that. Now I've used all the colors except for brown. I didn't use a lot of brown. So remember, this is two different sections. So each section is outlined in the marker. So I'm just using some U's. Sometimes I use the U and that reminds me of scales on either a fish or a dragon. So if I did the purple up here, I'm gonna go over here and use purple. Space it apart so my colors aren't next to each other. I'm just doing kind of an abstract shape and going with it. It's fun to sometimes make things up and be creative, and sometimes it's really challenging. If you're having a hard time coming up with a design, you can repeat one that you used, just like the color. If I had orange, I don't want to put orange right next to it, just like I said with the purple. So if you have a heart design and you want to repeat it, maybe don't make the hearts right next to each other. But I know boys and girls have such great imagination. I'm just filling this one in with lots of bubbles. So as long as it's repeating, it's considered your pattern. And notice I've been keeping mine in the same color, like this is all blue, all orange. I guess if you want to kind of mix up colors, you can. It depends how much time you want. So if you wanted to use all the colors and make like little rainbows in there, you could and get creative that way. It's whatever you want. This one I'm going to do clouds because blue kind of reminds me of clouds. I'm going to do different shaped clouds. And this is kind of a big section, so if you're working and your idea changes, you can always go back and say, hey, you know what, I want to add another section there. What does that look like? Our saguaro cactus? Yep, so that's just a straight line with these little curved, silly arms. I love those saguaro cactus. They have so much personality. The desert is a very unique place. So I have 2 more. Kind of mixing up lines here. Almost using a wavy and straight. I did a little silly swirl with some dots on it. Again, kind of combining 2 things. So here is my abstract design. From there, putting my markers away, and I'm gonna bring out my crayons. Now, in my finished example here, you can see how I used my crayons to color lightly behind it. I thought it made the picture look more complete. If for you, maybe you look at your example and you just want to bring out the letter of your name and make that kind of pop forward. If you want to color it all with crayons, that's up to you. And however you decide to use those colors, again, up to you. Okay, so that's my abstract design using the first letter of my name. I really love how creative you are and how everyone's sending me photos of their art. Again, if you want to make this design with your whole name in bubble letters or block letters, go for it if you want. There's so many different ways you can do this. All I want to see is an abstract design with lines and shapes. I want to see at least 10 different sections divided up, and you can outline it in the black markers. Figure out how you want to use the markers and crayons. Be unique, be original. I'm so excited to see what you'll create.